Are you looking for a fun way to win up to 25 times your money this football and basketball season? Test your skills on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select two or more players, pick more or less on their projections for a wide variety of stats, and place your entry. It's as easy as that. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and injury insurance on your picks are what makes Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Ready to test your skills? Join the Prize Picks community of more than 7 million players who have already signed up. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit up to $100. Just visit prizepicks.com/bluewire and use code BLUEWIRE. That's code BLUEWIRE at prizepicks.com/bluewire for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy.
Hello and welcome to the Silk Stockings podcast. This is Kirk Henderson and Josh Bowe for Pod Mavericks After Dark. That was our, I wouldn't call it new music because you've had it for a while. I just forget to put it on. And then it was a new video for those watching over the screen. Josh, what's going on today?
Good. I'm adjusting my camera after we've already hit record, which was fun. But that gave me some nostalgia there. That's the intro music I found from a free unlicensed or whatever free licensed music website when we first started up the podcast, like in 2018 or whatever.
Yeah, we're bringing it back.
I love it.
Shout out to our man Panda Hank 41. You should go subscribe to his channel for putting together that I guess you'd call it a video. It's a still image, but that's what we're going to be leading off the show with here on the podcast. So it's been a couple weeks since we talked. You were out of commission last week, which considering the things that have happened to you and I in our personal lives, like we would be dead if the Mavericks were in the second round of the playoffs. I'm really not sure what the hell we would have done.
I don't know either. I really don't. I still don't feel good. So
yeah.
It's just DFW right now is like a hellscape with the air quality. Like allergies are just out of control, and my sinuses are already bad. So yeah, I'm hanging on by a thread the last couple of days, but better than last week for sure. Where I just had a fever that just wouldn't go away. But here we are.
Right. Well, we're here now, and it's been a little bit of time, and we were going over the things Ben and I talked about last week in your absence, and there's a lot of kind of the last 3 days. There's been a shocking amount of Mavs adjacent stuff, and we build in these weekly shows. We try to space out elements of content because we want to do regular shows, but then sometimes things bunch up, and so a couple of things happened today or in the last 48 hours that are actually, at least that I wanted to talk to you about. And I'm glad we have the ability to talk about it. So the first thing that happened, this broke from Mark Stein at about 6:00 today, that various people that are going to be representing teams at the lottery next week. And the Mavericks, they went like general manager Nico Harrison is going to be representing Dallas on TV. And I feel like we criticize the Mavericks for everything, but he's a boring pick. He doesn't make me mad. It's fine. It's this is a 41-year-old organization with some storied people. I wouldn't have minded seeing Cuban, honestly. It's who do you associate with the Mavericks? There are various people, the Trailblazers went with Brandon Roy, which is fascinating because I've heard that they don't have the best relationship. And it's I just think it's interesting. Like there's stuff that you can do, and you know what? I guess you might look a little silly. Like the one that stands out in my mind is when during the LeBron James lottery, Jerry West basically had to sit there and smile for Memphis as things didn't go their way, and it can be a little bit uncomfortable. But I don't know. I would have liked to have seen something more. Is that an unfair gripe?
No, because it's now a thing for bits. Teams do bits with this, and the Mavericks love to do bits, so it's kind of funny that they decided to hold off. This is really funny. If Mark Cuban does happen to listen to this, I'm gonna guarantee like a 75% chance he sends you a DM about how he's gonna be like, "Hey, I'm finally like trying to get out of the spotlight and not do media. Now you're killing me."
No, it's not even. It's just there's something.
Know.
It's like somebody was. One of my non-Mavericks friends was like, "Why doesn't Dirk do it?" I'm like, "Dirk's traveling around the world, man.
Yeah, he's got better shit to do."
Right, and I'm sure he would have done it if it works out. It's like for us, it feels like Dirk only gets trotted out as like a in the middle of a bad news cycle kind of thing. Like, hey, here's Dirk Nowitzki, and but it is what it is. It's a little thing. I am a superstitious fan. It's just how I am. And I think I like leaning into that element. One of the things that we have written about and will come up is the fact that the Mavericks have never moved up in the lottery. They've only fallen or stayed the same. And they've been in the lottery enough times to where that's statistically very strange.
And they've been very bad. And, I mean, they were the worst team of the 90s and they never moved up, which is crazy.
Right. Well, that's that. So then, the next thing that came out was our former editor and friend, Tim Cato, has been doing this regular social media survey. And it's funny because he admits that it's not scientific, but it's just the sort of thing that really, when you take a look at it, it's on theathletic.com. He got nearly 1,900 responses to this interestingly worded, and he even admits this in the methodology survey, that it attempts to not suss out specific answers. Like he wants to know what people think without being like, hey, send me an email with all your Mavericks thoughts. That's kind of the gist of this. And there was not anything in it that really, really jumped out to me. Did you happen to take a look at this? Because it's like,
yeah, I did.
What was there anything for you that you were like, man, this was really, really interesting?
I think it's not a coincidence. I mean, Tim acknowledged it in the post where he posted the results. People are pretty fed up with the roster and the team. People are ready for change, but also, he's, that's what 1,900 participants. How many of those were from Twitter? And
probably most
Twitter fan is a different
animal
than the guy that doesn't get online and just watches the game on TV and goes to bed and whatever. So it doesn't surprise me that it's leaning towards I'm tired of the team, because I mean, everyone that really invested their time into this team, which are all of us lunatics that are following, and us media and the people that are online and posting about it, that it was a rough season. And it's been a rough couple of years of roster building, so it makes sense. Our old colleague Andy had a really funny really made me laugh when he responded to the 74% of the respondents want to keep Maxi Kleber, and he was just kind of like, I don't know what kind of intervention we have to have with Mavs fans.
Did we run Andy's column? There's a live reaction of the behind the scenes. With
I don't think we've done that because he hasn't been able to edit it because he's been sick.
We need to follow up with him because that was a banger of a column. It was a really good one.
Yeah,
it's fine. Anyway,
so that just made me laugh. That because Maxi is one of those, he's just one of those guys that's been here forever. So you would think there's some sentiment that they need to move on, but he had a lot of support. So I think, Endry gives him a grace period. So we'll see what happens this season. But yeah, otherwise, most of it felt like what people that are going to take their time to respond to an online Mavs poll, those answers mostly matched up.
Right. Well, so this is the part I found interesting, and I knew I just scrolled to trigger my brain with it because it was a long post because he asked a lot of questions. If the Mavericks retain the 10th overall pick, would you prefer the team keep it or trade it? And 53.5% of respondents said they hope the Mavericks trade the pick. And Tim wrote this underneath the question. I posited that the trade would be for a veteran role player who filled a position of need, nothing exceptional. Basically, the question asks if fans would prioritize adding another young player to the team's core trying to win now. I just found myself pretty surprised by this because we as a fan base have clamored for young talent. And part of why we all wanted the Mavericks to, at least as I understood it, everyone was very interested in the Mavericks keeping the 10th pick was to draft a player. Now we all kind of understand the Mavericks front office will probably want to move it to get a win now player, but what we want versus what the Mavericks are going to do are kind of two different things. I found myself surprised by that because this is one area where a friend of me of the show, Matt Moore, I think is correct in that, what are you really going to get for the 10th pick? The Portland Trailblazers have the 5th best odds. If they stay at 5, they can undercut anything the Mavericks would want to do.
They want to win now just as badly as
Mavericks do. Badly. And they as a team, like I like Dame. I'm glad, Dame's loyal. Yay. Luka's twice the player Dame is. And if you were to put Luka on that team, I think they would do better. Like Jeremy Grant might be a better player than any player the Mavericks have other than Kyrie Irving. He's in, they just have a lot of pretty good guys. And so I think they could really, do a decent package for the 5th pick in a player. So it's just the Mavericks might really get undercut there. So that's something I'm just sort of thinking about. That was something I found odd. Now, like we're kind of at the point in the year where I'm interested in what people want. We all know the Mavericks don't care about what we want. That much is obvious because they're building the team. What fans want, I would make an argument like probably wouldn't come into consideration, but it's just something that's been sort of in my head.
Yeah. I mean, because it's this is like the crossroad. This is it. Like, this is the moment. They're not going to have, knock on wood, but they shouldn't, if things go according to plan, or even if they don't, I can't imagine a scenario where they have another top 10 pick while Luka is under contract. So
that's right.
This is the most valuable asset they might have for the remainder of his contract. So all's riding on it, whether they trade it or whether they keep it. So yeah, I understand, wanting to talk about it, wanting to gauge the temperature of it because the Mavericks haven't been here before. This is just new territory. They're either bad or they're good. It's weird that they're in this. We should be good but bad. That usually just doesn't happen to this organization since Dirk's been drafted. So yeah, it's weird, and I think that maybe that spurs some of the, they want to trade it. Like us thinking the fan base would want to keep it. Maybe it's weird because the stakes are different than they were like when they were bad in 2017 or 2018 or whatever.
Yep. Well, then the next thing that I thought was interesting was, since we have the draft coming up, Sam Vecini of The Athletic redid what he thinks would happen if the folks were able to redo the 2022 draft. And Jaden Hardy, who the Mavericks selected 37th by essentially buying the Kings pick, they had the redraft has him getting selected at 17. And I found 17 to be just right when I was really looking into this, because look, like there's a lot of interesting conversations going on about Jaden Hardy right now. Jaden Hardy is a 6'3" guard. The Mavericks have all their best players are guards. I'm not high or low on Hardy. I think what the Mavericks did with Hardy this last year worked out just about as well as I could have possibly imagined. Like that's his development and the way they developed him and the path they brought him along, I think is pretty impressive. And so to move 20 spots in a redraft, that's right to me. Some fans were oddly irritated that he didn't make an all rookie team and he didn't play enough. Like the Mavericks had basically a 4-quarter plan where they didn't play him at all in the first 20 games because he was in the G League working on his game. Mm-hmm. And then they ramped up his usage here and there. And our friend Dalton, I've kind of been debating with him where he said something effective. Well, I think if they would have played him more, that would, we'd be feeling differently. And, you don't play rookies when you're trying to make the playoffs, second round rookies. Like that just doesn't happen. So it's like that's a situation that I don't know. I'm rambling a bit. I've been kind of, I don't want to say frustrated because I want to take away people's joy, but like, what are we doing? Hardy is fine.
Yeah, but also, you play him more earlier in the season. It's not a guarantee that he's going to come along like he did. Like
you could be
maybe that G League stint early in the season helped him because he did really, really well.
Confidence is important.
Yeah. What if they played him like 10 games in November and he's awful? Like, what does that do for the rest of his season? What does that do to the coaching staff's confidence? Like, Hardy's like the biggest success from last season. Like, I don't want to touch or criticize any of it. Like, the fact that he didn't make an all rookie team has nothing to do with him. I don't think it has anything to do with the Mavericks. It has to do with, this was a pretty loaded rookie class. Like, this was a really good rookie season.
A lot of functional players.
Yeah. And a lot of functional players, plus a lot of guys getting a lot of time on some bad teams. So the numbers are just not there. Like, you might say like Hardy was a more efficient player than like Jabari Smith in Houston, but like, I mean, at the end of the day, he played like 80 games and averaged like 12 and 8. Like, you have to, at the end of the day, you can't just put a guy over the team like that. So, it's not a slight. Not everything has to be a slight or a negative. I just enjoy the victories where you get them.
Moving 20 spots up, I think, is really something. Like Christian Braun, like Sam has Christian Braun at 16, Tari Eason at 15, Mark Williams at 14, Dyson Daniels at 13, Jalen Duren, and then you get to the guys that had all rookie seasons. Like, this was like, he's right on that cusp, and I think that's pretty interesting. I really do, because one of the things we got to remember, folks, is that he really wasn't very good in the G League. Like, he looked bad.
Before he got drafted.
Before he got drafted, right? Like last season, sorry. And so it was a gamble, and it's one of those. It's why we talk about bites at the apple. You want to have gambles pay off. It's valuable. Anyways, I just been thinking about him a lot. I had a discussion yesterday with somebody who said, next year I think Jaden Hardy can score close to 20 points a game. And I pulled up the list. The NBA has really inflated scoring this year relative to historical averages. Right. 43 players in the league scored 20 points or more per game. That's 10% of the active NBA roster. I think that's a little high. I want like 12 points a game in 25 minutes. I want something.
Still feels like high expectations.
Sure.
For me.
Yeah. No, I mean, double-digit score is something I think he could be. And that's fine with me. I mean, our friend Austin just said, I would love to see Jaden Hardy turn into like a Tyrese Maxey type guy. And I'm just like, Jesus Christ, that's an insane comp. The man just scored 30 points in game 5 of a playoff game. Like, don't do that.
Yeah. And it's like, it's the same thing with Josh Green after training camp. And it's like, guys, like, just, you're setting yourself up for something that's not going to happen. And yeah, Green had a great season, but also he didn't finish it well. There were aspects of his game that weren't great. That I think people just kind of went through the moon. And, when Dorian was traded, I think a lot of people were like, oh, well, he's going to be better than Dorian. He kind of was in some cases, but, he kind of fell off a cliff. It's like, just let these guys develop. Like, just take the wins. Like, Josh Green's season was a win. Hardy's season was a win. Like, they don't need to turn into all-stars before their first contract is up to make them.
That's exactly right.
Worth it.
Well, then the next piece of news, and this was a fascinating one for me. Former Dallas Maverick, Kristaps Porzingis, went on the Ariel Helwani basketball show, and he talked a little bit about his time in Dallas, and he had some really like self-reflecting things to say, which my favorite part about the Kristaps, and I say this sort of sarcastically, but Kristaps had the best quotes because he always, like, there was no reading between the lines. He would tell you when he wasn't getting enough looks. Like, it was mildly passive aggressive and such, but he was always like, yeah, this was the problem type quotes. And, he said, I thought so too, for sure. Porzingis said, while agreeing that his fit with Doncic wasn't a perfect one. We never played up to that level, and a lot of that's on me. And the high level he was referencing was the level that the Mavericks played with in the bubble, which everybody played great in the bubble who was playing there. It's a different experience. Porzingis went on to say, I wasn't playing at that level that I'm playing at right now. Overall, I think sooner or later a trade was going to be the result. And he said, he went on to say, they always treated me good. They always treated me well. I truly wish everybody in the organization the best, which you just don't got to say stuff like that when you leave. You get traded, you move on to new orgs. You could always just kind of PR speak it. And the fact that he admitted that by, the fit didn't work for how he was playing. And we all talked about that. And a lot of folks were very upset by that, who really liked Porzingis' game and wanted Luka to conform to him more. And I just think it's interesting that he kind of admitted that.
Yeah. I mean, he's always been very media savvy. He's always been pretty good talking to the media. I think that's one of the reasons why, I mean, he got some heat in Dallas, but I think, reporters like people generally liked him. And I mean, not saying he wasn't a bad guy, but he's always been well-spoken in these kind of interviews. And yeah, it was interesting. And, it's hard to, there's part of it where you're like, how much of it was on him? How much of it was on the Mavericks and Luka? And I think anytime you get into the point of like blaming someone other than KP, for the fans, that probably strikes a nerve because KP missed a lot of games. And, I think the thing that was weird about his time in Dallas was there's a part of me that thinks that the Mavericks thought that KP was going to be a better player than Luka that first year that they were together playing together.
Yep.
And I wonder if KP thought that too, like going into that season. I wonder if he was like, okay, I'm the alpha. This is Luka's second year. I'll be his, he'll be my co-star. Mm-hmm. Luka's ascension, we saw it, but not everyone else is going to see it. I mean, I didn't see year 2 blowing up as much as it did. Nope. So I wonder if that just changed the dynamic between the two in the locker room and the organization, that it was like, oh, Luka's the alpha and KP's like, he was the guy in New York. He got showered with praise. Like he was the next big thing until he got traded. So that must've been kind of a wake up call or just something tough to deal with because, it's easy for us to be like, well, your role's different now. Just spot up and shoot threes and just play defense and don't complain. And you're getting paid $1 million. You're getting paid $25 million a year. Don't, just do it. And like, it's easy for us to say that, but these guys who have been, used to a certain way of playing for so long, which for KP was like about 4 years, it's hard to flip that switch. And I wonder if that's kind of part of it.
Certainly is. Want to take a moment before we talk about the last piece of news. Everybody do me a favor, hit that like button on the stream. Also, if you could go and subscribe to our show on YouTube, that sort of thing very much helps us. To get notified of these live shows, and basically everything we do is live since it then gets saved as a video. I think there's different notifications you can click through to particularly if it'll let you know on your phone. You can watch through that. As everybody knows, we do these live shows. I've been doing on Friday afternoon. I'll probably do another one this Friday. We'll see how long we can keep it up because I've really gotten a kick out of some of our European and overseas followers that are so far ahead, clicking in the middle of the night to hang out. That's been fun. So yeah, I would appreciate if you guys were able to do that. So the last piece of news that I'm less, it's not like I'm using news, but I think what it means big picture. And I do think Ben and I talked about this, but I want to talk about it with you. The Mavericks are going to play 2 preseason games in Abu Dhabi to go along with at least, I think there's one game against Real Madrid for preseason. So I want to guess if you know what my take is away from this. Do you have any ideas? You're muted.
Sorry about that. I've had a coughing fit all night, so I'm trying to keep that off the airwaves. I'm gonna guess you are not looking forward to some of this because there's a trend in the preseason of teams that travel overseas get off to bad starts in the regular season.
I am, and I want to pair that with the fact that in kids' 2 seasons with the Mavericks, and really kids' basketball seasons period as a coach, he does a fair amount. Chuck Cooperstein pointed this out where he said he does a fair amount of experimentation earlier in the year. And personally, I think Kid is on a slow burner that where the heat can turn up quickly. They cannot afford a slow start again, is my take on this. And so you pair the challenge that comes from throwing off your training camp schedule with playing these games overseas that aren't really real games and doing a lot of things like that out in the neighborhood, out in the world with what we've kind of known historically about how teams start slow and all this. I'm very interested. It's something that's up there. We all kind of talked about how we had wondered if the Mavericks would move on from Kidd, which all of us knew that really wasn't going to happen, but it was, I know it's something that's been rattling around in my brain and will probably live there. I hope they don't start slow because, who wants to cover losses? That sucks.
I mean, I feel like they've started slow every season since Luka's second year. I think last 3 seasons they've been under 500 after the first.
I think that's right.
Or around 500, not where they want to be. So yeah, it's tough. Always worried about throwing off Luka's training camp schedule. What's that going to do for his shape? Because he is an amoeba that can seemingly get in and out of shape at the drop of a hat. So,
he looked pretty good. There were some photos around him on the internet today. He looked good. I mean, for him, like he didn't look like, he didn't look like
he's never going to look like that.
He didn't look like a player we should freak out about. How's that?
There you go.
But yeah, so I don't know, that's kind of the final piece of news. All right, so for the podcast guests who are listening, later on, because it's currently recording Tuesday night, May 9th, we're going to take a quick break. 2 short ads. Remember, if you listen to those ads, that helps Josh and I. It's one of the real ways you can actually support us is by ad impressions. For the video people, I will stop talking for about 5 seconds and then we will click back into this. So thanks so much for the break.
We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. One of the things I love about Indeed is it makes hiring all in one place so easy and streamlined so I can spend more time on the rest of my business. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences. So the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
All right. Weird format that I'm choosing to go with here. I don't know why I said thanks so much for the break. I am just losing my mind. I have been awake a lot. Well, I was alone with my son this weekend, and I told him we could start Breath of the Wild, which meant he was like 6 a.m. Saturday and Sunday, where he's like, Breath of the Wild. And I'm like, it's not really coherent. All right. So we're going to end the show with a review of 4 players. We're more or less done, I think, at Mavs Moneyball with our player reviews. And you can go and search those out on the site. We did one for just about everybody except whichever Morris twin the Mavericks had this year. Even at this point, I don't know which one it was.
Markieff.
So, yeah, Markieff. Okay, Markieff. We didn't do one of him. We still need to publish the one on Kyrie. Matthew, if you're listening to this, answer my texts and write the Kyrie review. So, oddly enough, G League player McKinley Wright IV played a significant amount of basketball for the Mavericks this year. 27 games, and he played nearly just over a quarter a game when he played. He wasn't, he's an interesting guy because he's a little older, undersized fighter, got put in a position that's not really fair to him, if we're being candid. And I think with what he did, I was pleased with the minutes that he had to play, but the fact that he had to play at all speaks to our problems with the team building from the get-go.
Yeah, I mean, he had to play because they had no answer for replacing Jalen Brunson, and they went through Campazzo, who we knew wouldn't work. They went through Kemba, who we knew even if he worked, he had a what are you going to call it? He had a shelf life. He had a hard expiration date. He had to play because after that, they just didn't really have any backup guards. So yeah, he was fine. He was fun. It was if the season is going to be bad and guys are going to have to play, I'd rather see Wright play than like a Facu Campazzo or
Yes.
or
No,
even
that's
Kemba.
very true.
Like I'd rather see Wright. Like you might as well see if you have something out of him. Like he's what you use. He's the point of two ways. You just see what you have, and you take a dart throw at a young guy, and he had some moments. I don't know what his future is in the league, or if he has a future with the Mavericks. We'll see. But I mean, he did enough in his time that I wouldn't mind him back on that two-way slot, or like they probably need to do is just rotate through, find another guy, take another dart throw. But he was nice. I think something that impressed the staff, like when we'd watch games in Slack, is like, wow, he can run a pick and roll. Like he knows how to run an NBA pick and roll, which is not like it's pretty good for a undrafted, two-way player. So that's something they can maybe build on with him. He seems to like to play defense, which there weren't a lot of guys on the roster that like to do that, especially after the Kyrie trade. So who knows? He could be someone that they could put some development time into. But if they moved on, I also wouldn't shed a tear or anything like that.
Yeah, I think that's right. If he is on like the summer league roster, I think that would be a pretty good indicator that the Mavericks are hoping to kind of keep him in that two-way spot. But that, if he's not, I could just be misspeaking. I'm going to be very curious to see what happens with him. The NBA seems to like these developmental spots, and they should. You should take advantage of the tools in front of you, bring guys up, and there's no harm in having him sit on the bench. I was glad to watch a guy play hard, is what I'll say about him, and that. Because sometimes we see that they don't, and that leads me directly into the next guy we were going to talk about, the marquee signing of the offseason, JaVale McGee, and I am just now noticing that in our player review, his name is not properly capitalized. So, good job, us as editors. We all know the deal by now. McGee was brought in on most of the Mavs. Was it the taxpayer mid-level exception?
Yeah, I think like the shorthand is like mid-level.
It's like it's in the neighborhood. It's in the neighborhood of $20 million a year, which ended up being his second biggest contract of his career. He's 34 now. He'll be 36 when it's over. The Mavericks started the first 8 games of the year with him, and he was not good because he is not good. I've kicked him so much for so long, and it's not. I don't want to say it's not fair to him. It's very fair to him. Like, he is a veteran who is capable of playing harder than he does and playing smarter than he does, and he just doesn't do it. And so at a certain point, I never understood why the Mavericks brought him back, period. Other than Kidd wanted him, which I will never be able to prove that Jason Kidd wanted him. But if JaVale McGee is the answer, then the question is fucking frightening.
Yeah, they got spooked by Kevon Looney in the playoffs last year. So
sure, he's scary, but McGee can't be the answer.
No, I know. They just overreacted. And it's very funny because like Nico's exit interview, he basically listed the exact same things that he listed at the end of 2022. There were a lot of other, I don't want to go down the list of guys that they could have gotten with that mid-level exception that would have been much, much, much more helpful players. So, just for reference, like a guy like Bruce Brown on the Nuggets, who's their super sub, he was signed with that same exception. A little bit more money because the Mavericks had to use it to sign Hardy, but you can make that work if they were actually interested. They weren't interested. So, it sucked. We knew it wasn't going to work. He started, it didn't work. Then like they just mothballed him and he just never played. Like he went from starting to just not even part of the rotation anymore. And then
every time Kidd would try him, Kidd would try him, and every time he tried,
every 2 weeks,
it would be like he would be like a -6 in 2 minutes. And it's like, how does that happen? Oh, it happens because he goes for weak side blocks and chases boards, and he just doesn't stick to assignments.
Yeah, and he had that moment. He had like a couple of decent games toward the end of the year in March. Like I remember specifically when Kidd basically played him and Wood the entire second half together. In that game,
I bet he'd never played that long in his career. It's like 24 straight minutes without a break.
It was crazy. And then that forced, of course, the fan base to be like, well, why isn't he been playing all season? And it's like, guys, nothing would have changed if he played more. They still would have had the same issues. So again, it was a bad contract the moment they signed it. I mean, and people can we all, even ourselves, tried to talk ourselves into it, because at a certain point, no one wants to hear you yelling about how much something sucks over and over again. So we just tried to talk ourselves into it. But we knew, we both knew as soon as the contract was signed what was going to happen. And this is why he's a journeyman. He's been on 1-year contracts for almost his entire career. Like he's someone you get as like your emergency, maybe backup big, but like the multi-year contract, the guarantee to start, it was just a disaster from the beginning. It was never going to work. And now I wonder if this summer, now they're probably trying to find a way to get off his contract, which is going to be really hard. I don't think
you can.
Yeah, unless they give up something that they don't want to give up, which they don't have enough assets to dump one just to get off McGee's money. So they might.
It does seem like if there's not like an upside here, but it does seem like his teammates enjoyed him, with the exception of Luka Doncic. Luka had like a lot of like frustrated looks for him during the year, but that has to do with his play, not necessarily him as a person. And if you can get by with being just a guy on the bench, then that'll be fine. It was what Bobby did, but Boban was a $2 million player. So
exactly.
I know. Well, all right. So the next guy we want to talk about is probably the most interesting, even though we have 2 guys left. Probably these next 2 guys are different interesting for different reasons. Maxi Kleber. I don't really know how to talk about his season, because when you tear your hamstring off the bone, that sort of gives you almost like the grade of incomplete. He came back somehow, some way. He explained it a couple of times. I still don't really understand what happens. He looked good for a game and then was essentially burnt toast for the entire, he had the game-winning shot against Los Angeles Lakers, which was admittedly very cool. But he was really, after he came back from injury, he looked like a guy who tore his hamstring. And they signed him to a 3-year extension this past offseason. Why is something I will never understand. Like who is chasing 31-year-old Maxi? Anybody? It's not that the deal was bad. I'm just like, I'm curious about what are the mechanics there. Are you worried that Maxi's going to get away for a price you can't match? Like I don't know. I feel
he's such a weird player because his archetype is so valued that I don't know what the rest of the league thinks.
Maybe that's why they're worried, because there's somebody going to come for him. And as we well know, his shot just comes and goes. Like it almost reminds me of like a pitcher with the yips, where it just like some games he has it, some stretches he has it. I remember there was a lot of the internet like to give Jeff Skin Wade a lot of grief for his comments about Maxi after one game, or it's like, oh, you guys didn't believe in him that last March. Well, March of 2022, Maxi Kleber shot 17% from 3. I still remember the game against the Utah Jazz in the playoffs where he hit more threes in the game than he did in the entire month of March. Like he was real bad. And granted, his defense was much better last season. And that's really where the kind of questions are remaining with him, because he just, if you can't jump, that means what is he bringing? Because he doesn't rebound. He can hit shots, but he doesn't shoot enough. Well, like I feel sort of bad for him, because I think he's in a rough situation right now.
Yeah, he had the second lowest block rate of his career. It's not a good trend. Tied for the lowest steal rate. So, like, his ability to make splash defensive plays was one of the worst it's been since he's been in Dallas.
Yep.
Which is not a good sign for a guy that has injury history and is on the other wrong side of 30. So you wonder how much of that hamstring injury was a part of that. It probably was. And like you said, he doesn't rebound. He doesn't do any, he's not a passer. You can't run any offense through him. He's purely a screen and roll, pick and pop, just spot up shooter. And even then, he averaged 25 minutes a game and only took 3 threes a game, which is difficult to impact the game offensively when you're just not shooting that much. Like, he just doesn't shoot a lot. So, we'll see. He's one of those weird guys where he's really important to the Mavericks, because if they didn't have him, they just don't have anyone. But also it's like he's Like, how many minutes would he play on the Boston Celtics? Like, how many minutes would he play on the Philadelphia 76ers? Like, it's no offense to, I'm not trying to take a slight at him. It's just he's very indispensable to this roster, but more because of how the roster's built, not less because of his impact, which has been kind of wishy-washy the last couple years.
They leaned on him more and more as he got less and less capable.
Yeah, I mean, if you watch highlights of him from his rookie year or second year till now, I mean, it's not even close. Like the step he's lost, and again, maybe it is, maybe coming back a year removed from that hamstring injury, maybe he looks different. I still think it's crazy that he injured it, rehabbed, came back all in the same season, and then like Zion Williamson had a season-ending hamstring strain,
right?
Doesn't require surgery. So, like, again, you want to give him credit for, like, he obviously battled his ass off to get back on the floor. So he's going to have a grace period, but if he puts up a similar season to the last maybe two this upcoming season, it's going to, it's just going to really hurt this team. Like, unfortunately, they need him to be like a starting caliber stretch five. That's like their rim protector, their jack of all trade. Like, they need him to defend like Draymond Green and then also hit spot up threes. And it's like, like not even Draymond shoots threes. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, if he's your third big in a rotation of three bigs, you're really excited.
Right.
Because he's playing like 15 minutes a game.
I mean, even if
really
he's your second big.
Even
if he's like your backup, but like, I mean, I know he was a backup for the last two seasons, but he closed every game. He closed every playoff game. Like, he was part of their top five and closing five lineup. So they try to manage his minutes because they know if he plays 30 minutes, he turns into dust. So yeah, we'll see. It'd be really cool if they could rely on him less and he was more of just like a 20-minute bench guy that can come in and change the momentum of a game. But right now he's still their closer as a big. So we'll see what they do.
That brings us to our last guy, Tim Hardaway. Tim Hardaway Jr. came into the year with interesting expectations. I would say, for those who may not remember the specifics, it was late January 2022 where he went down with a foot injury, and he wouldn't play the rest of the year. There was always a lot of talk about him maybe making a comeback, and it didn't happen. Foot injuries are difficult. Not much to be, to comment on that. So for him to come into this year, he was on starting year 2 of a 4-year deal, and the expectations were confused in the sense of I think folks didn't know what we would get from Tim Hardaway, and he was really bad. And then all of a sudden, after like 60 total games under Jason Kidd, he finally starts hitting shots. And I think people will not totally remember this, but there was a point in the year where he felt like the worst contract on the Dallas Mavericks because he had to play. Like Tim's scoring and playing almost tied hand in hand with the Mavericks' ability to win games. It was nuts. And I still to this day don't really know what to think about Tim Hardaway Jr. because there's a chance he might have like positive value. Is that nuts?
I think they rebuilt his value a little bit this season. Yeah. He still had a weird season. Not even talking about like just where like the light switch flipped and he just started making all his threes. He shot a career low on twos.
He shots the rim.
He regressed this season so bad on everything but 3-pointers. Like, and it's great that he got his 3-point shot back because that's going to be how you sell him to other. Like, if he was still okay at the other stuff, but he was making 33% of his threes, like no one's trading for him.
Right.
People can look past the other stuff if he's making his threes, which he is. Still oddly gets talked about by a lot of people as like a great defender, and he gives a great individual effort and one-on-one matchups, but like as a team defender, he's not there. That's been a thing since he's been here. Good to see the 3-point shot back. Very troubling that a guy that turned 30 had his worst 2-point percentage of his career, because that's not something that's going to get better as you get older and you maybe you slow down a little bit. And he was never like a great player inside the arc with the Mavericks, except for maybe like 1 year. And a lot of that was like Rick drawing up stuff to get him good looks at the rim and taking some of the bad shots out of his diet, which obviously doesn't happen now with Kidd. He has the green light to shoot whatever he wants. So weirdly, he's kind of indispensable in the sense that he's the only high volume 3-point shooter on the roster besides Luka, and now they have Kyrie. But before Kyrie, he was it. Like, and you need those guys. Like, people get so mad at Tim, and I understand why. And people want to trade him for just like anything, and they want to dump him. They just want him off the team. And I'm like, guys, you can't have like this is pre-Kyrie trade, but you can't just have Luka surrounded by like Dorian and Maxi and Powell and Reggie and all these guys that shoot like 2 to 4 3-pointers a game with Luka, who's the greatest 3-point shot creator in basketball right now. Like, you need someone that has a quick trigger, and you saw that this season. When Tim was bad, they lost, and when Tim was good, they won because he was the only guy that would shoot a bunch of threes and make them. So if they do find a way to like trade him and move on, they have to make sure that whether they get it back in that package or they get it in the draft or another trade, another transaction, they have to have another guy that can shoot at the volume that Tim does, or the offense is really going to struggle.
Because, Luka likes to size everything up. And I think there's an element of why, like Kyrie pushing the pace at different points, I think was also pretty helpful for a guy like Tim Hardaway. It's just so odd that he matters this much to them. Like and that's just kind of the theme of today's players, where it's like, boy, they just have a rough roster. They just have a rough roster. So
yeah, it's weird because it's like people are like, we got to get rid of Tim, just dump his contract. It's like they kind of need more Tims. I mean, as weird as that sounds, and like that's not my ideal, but I'm just saying, like I would love it if they had like 2 more guys that would shoot 7 threes a game and make 38% of them. Like, wouldn't you? Like with Luka, like, and the Mavericks offense was already good, so that's another part of it. How much are they going to try? Are they going to try to take a step back on offense because they feel like they really need that defensive upgrade that much? Is that what they used Tim's contract for? Because he's definitely rehabbed his value a little bit. I don't know. That'll be kind of the theme of the offseason. How much are they going to go all in on the defense to fix the defense at the expense of what is a really, really good offense, I think.
Yes. All right. We're basically right at the 45-minute mark, which for me is the ideal podcast length for every podcast I listen to, where if it's like under 45 minutes, I'm like, what are they talking about? Is it interesting? Like, why are we just doing a short show? If it's over 45 minutes, like, what are we doing, guys? You need to make this shorter. Week from today is a draft lottery. I'm putting this out into the void now that we will be having a live show like this. I can't remember the time. Lottery's earlier in the evening, so we're both probably going to need to get some special dispensation from the wives to have a live look at what's happening.
It's usually before whatever first playoff game is tipping off that night. I usually put it before that.
And if you don't remember, guys, because it's been a while since the Mavs were in lottery, the way this whole thing goes is the show starts at 7, just making up the time. They don't actually do the lottery until like 7:20, and it's like a painful television experience because you're just like, can we please hurry this up? That's the only thing we want to know is the picks. And they do they go through in reverse order, and so they start with 14 and go down to 5, and then they break for commercial, and then they reveal the top 4. If anyone notices, things happen in a hurry. So what we hope to do is to be like watching this with you guys in real time, which is going to be extraordinarily painful if the Mavericks happen to lose their pick, and extraordinarily exciting if they happen to jump into the top 4. So put that on your calendars. I will have a show up in advance to where you can, set reminders and do that sorts of thing. Once Josh and I figure out exactly when we're going to be able to hop on, I do think we'll probably do just, frankly, some of our listeners are more versed in the draft than we are, because this is just not what you and I do. We have some guys who are writing about it on the site, and, we'll have some more interesting stuff, I think, to talk about once the lottery sorts itself out, because it goes, there's not like the two paths diverge in terms of the Mavericks either have the pick or they don't. And then that can really kind of set the content tone for what we hope to do, at least the rest of the summer. Do you have anything else before we get out of here?
No, I'm good. I can't wait for the lottery. Can't wait to get that, just to know which pick it is, or if they have the pick, God forbid. Because it's really hard to be like, hey, do you want them to trade the pick? And it's like, well, I mean, if it's top 4, I don't want them to trade the pick. It's just, it'll be much more easier for us to talk about the offseason and the planning and the path that we think the Mavericks should go down, what they think they're going to do once we just know that pick. So they need next week to get here as fast as possible.
Looking forward to that. Again, and I will be doing a show on Friday, probably at 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. I've really enjoyed the live shows this offseason. People come in with questions and thoughts, and I really like hearing what people are thinking about, because just to be quite candid, I've been really making an effort to not be online during the workday as much, just to get through things. And it's like, there's just nothing to talk about right now. And everybody ends up talking themselves into circles. So again, if you haven't subscribed to our show, haven't liked this stream, please go ahead and do so. Please leave comments on the video itself. I really appreciate everybody that's coming in here with Josh and I. We're inching closer to 1,000 subscribers. And hopefully from there, that's when the rocket ship will take off. It's people told us to do this for years and we just didn't want to, but this is not actually much harder than what we were doing before. So we probably should have listened. This has been Kirk Henderson and Josh Bowe. This has been Pod Mavericks After Dark, and we will talk with you guys a little later in the week. Bye, guys.